Liberty lovers from 1776 Live. Welcome. Lisa, it's just you and I right now. So we got to wait for people to load in, I guess.
You never know.
How fun is this?
It's so fun.
So,
we can just talk and talk and talk.
Yeah. So last week we started broadcasting this meeting Sunday night, Liberty Lounge, which is part of the 1776 Live community events. And I started hosting it on Peasants Perspective to try to introduce my community, Peasants Perspective community, the peasants, with the Liberty Lounge 1776 crowd, of which, of course, you and I are in both. So anyways, super glad for everybody. Looks like we got a couple people who joined us. That's great. Welcome. And if anybody wants to join us, if they'd like to come on and say something in the chat, I am putting the link where you can actually come right on and you can join us. And I am going to, however, require approval. So anyways, did that. So if you'd like to join us, the link is in the chat, the few of you that jumped on. And while we're kind of waiting around for people to join in, Lisa, I have a video I wanted to share. So this right here is a video. You know this video. So this is, I don't even know the woman's name. She used to work for the IRS as one of their criminal investigators / auditors. Mm-hmm. And it's a 16-minute video. I figure we can watch a good chunk of this together. We'll stop it and pause it. So anything that you think interesting, just stop and let's make commentary. Pony Boy, welcome. All right. Love it. So anyways, I just thought this was fascinating. I was listening to a Sean Ryan podcast this week, and he was like, you know, this tax, what did he call it? Tax boycotting thing is really catching steam. I don't think everybody's going to want to be paying their taxes anymore. And I'm like, you're just now coming to this conclusion? Like 20 years in Iraq and Afghanistan and, you know, welfare queens up the wazoo. None of that got your attention? It took some pirates to finally get your attention. So anyways, let's watch this together.
Jackson. She is an ex-IRS agent.
You can hear the sound, right?
Yep.
EPA, fraud examiner. She was working for the IRS. She was on the fast track to success there. She was doing very well, had received numerous awards for all of the work she did. And she realized that there is no law and that the biggest fraud was the IRS.
I tried to be the best at whatever I did. So when I got to the IRS, I hit the ground running. My first year in 1988, I got the fraud award. It's a big Shaped in Georgia award for fraud. But I got numerous awards, and my biggest one is from the IRS commissioner himself. Back in 1995, it was Fred T. Goldberg. One of the things that I wanted to tip you off on as far as what the IRS does before I get into the story, they had, I don't know what they're doing now, but they had what's called the Market Segment Specialization Program, or MSSP. They would take different market segments, like ministers, and try to figure out how much money you were underreporting. Let's take beauticians, for example. I'm going to audit her beauty shop. She owns the shop and she has some people working there. Based on the assumption that the IRS has that people don't report all of their money, but they like to put all their expenses on there. So granted, all her expenses are on the tax return, and I figure out how many bottles of this and that she bought, I can calculate a dollar figure. So I'll tell Sophia, after it's all over and we're buddy-buddy, I just shock her and I say, well, guess what? It looks like, based on my calculations, that you really brought in $80,000, but you have $50 on the tax return.
So think about what she just did right there, right? She just audited somebody, didn't have any evidence of income, but based on a extrapolation mathematics that she has, she's going to accuse the person of having more income and that they owe more taxes with no evidence.
So here, you owe the IRS back $30,000. What would she do? She would sign off on it. I only had 2 cases in 7.5 years where somebody actually bucked at me. People are so afraid. The government and the media have gotten you guys so afraid of the IRS that you don't even buck them. Now, mind you, she might have left some money off. Maybe there was several times where she just didn't report the cash. And maybe that's why. Maybe she has no idea how much she quote unquote underreported. Maybe that was it. But they always acquiesce. They got one, anybody own a laundromat, they have one that will calculate based on your water bill how many loads were washed at your laundromat. And the point to all of this is what they do to people, and people just acquiesce to it.
I think that's interesting. She emphasizes people just acquiesce. People just acquiesce. She's going to mention the phrase in here, it's voluntary. Why are you acquiescing to something that's voluntary? And that's the thing, right? Lisa, in the 1776 live community, we dissect this all the time because people come to us that are hair on fire with IRS issues. It's not the hardest thing to work out, believe it or not. Why? Because you're intimidated by them. You don't realize you don't have to acquiesce. They usually don't even have evidence that you earned extra income or anything like that.
Well,
Let alone before we get into the discussion on what you actually owe them and who actually has to pay.
I'll share just Friday. My daughter did her tax return was done for 2024 and they changed the numbers. They sent her a letter and they gave her 30 days to respond. If you don't agree, call this number. She's never dealt with anything like this. She's a young adult, 23. So I said, well, I'll call with you. So we call them on Friday, and the woman on the phone was so assertive. She started saying, I don't see that you filed your 2020, 21, 22, 23 returns. They need to be done in 30 days. And my daughter's looking at me and she says, do you have all the documents to take care of that? And my daughter's like frozen, right?
Yeah.
You know? And so I'm texting her what to say. Meanwhile, when they got on the call, they said they were recording the call. So my daughter pushed to record the call on her phone, and the woman said, you're not allowed to record this. So it was so intimidating. And my daughter said, well, I don't know if I have all that stuff. She probably didn't hit the threshold to have to do anything, have to do any reporting. But it started right there. This is her first time dealing with the IRS. They sent her a change notice. They told her to call by a certain date. And she said, I am doing as you requested. I am calling you. And the woman launched right into, you haven't filed your taxes. You have 30 days to do it. So there you go.
Yep. I see Peter joined us here in studio. Peter, if you want to unmute and say hi, put your camera on, you can say hi. Otherwise, you can just keep watching. No problem. Hey, Peter.
Welcome.
So
I'm just checking it out. What are you guys talking about?
we're talking about IRS and taxes. And we'll probably talk about Iran by the end because that's like, big deal.
I'm getting ready to file mine. So,
oh, well, then this video is perfect for you.
I mean, I'm getting a quote unquote refund, but only because I claimed depreciation on my rental property.
So you're getting your loan that you loaned them back? Interest free?
I mean,
your donation.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's the cost of doing business in the country. It drives me nuts, but
feels like that. Yeah. Yeah, it feels like that. Let's finish this. This has got some really interesting information, Peter. You might really enjoy it. And just so everybody knows, Peter is like one of my good friends from since I was 14 years old. We met working at a Boy Scout camp. Peter was my boss.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. He's been around for everything. He's seen the good and the bad in my life. All right, let's go back to this little video here.
When I quit the IRS in 1995, and after maybe a year of being Jim Cleaver and realizing that was just not me, I hung my shingle, which in accounting terms or business terms is you start your own business. Now, you know that picture of Uncle Sam, the one that says Uncle Sam wants you? I used that same picture and I had it really big and I says, Uncle Sam wants your money, but I'm a former IRS agent. I'm going to show you how to get it back. You know, the people came running. And then these people start coming to me saying, I keep hearing that we're not supposed to pay tax. Or I keep hearing that the tax law is a fraud. And like I said, I was raised differently. I never would look at that person and say, you're a cuckoo. I wouldn't even think it. It was like, okay, you know, in this back burner back here, I would think to myself, okay, there's some people out there that actually think that the income tax doesn't apply to us or it's a fraud or it's being misapplied. But I didn't do anything about it because, remember, I'm rolling around with my little businesses and whatnot. So one night maybe in early June, one of my pastor clients called. It was night. It was about 9 o'clock at night. And she said, you know what? I think it was maybe a Wednesday night after her Wednesday night service. She said, I've got this parishioner that just keeps bugging me about this income tax. She's talking about that we're not liable for the income tax and she wants to talk to you. Can I give this lady your telephone number? And I said, okay. So maybe about 10 minutes later, this lady called me and she said, I have a question for you. Are we supposed to pay income tax or not? And I said, okay. Do you want the cuffed answer or do you want the real answer? She said, I want the real answer. I said, well, I really don't know. You know, even though I'm a former IRS agent, I haven't done the research, but I hear that there's a credible body of evidence out there that says that we don't owe income tax. I was okay. I mean, I took the information. I was sitting there listening like, okay. And, I said, okay, this lady had a lot of information. I don't know where she got it from. So a few weeks later, she called me again and she said, Miss Jackson, remember that information I told you on the phone? It's on the USA Today. Pull it up on the internet. Okay, so I got the USA Today. It was July 7th, 2000. And it says, Dear We the People, most citizens are not required to file an income tax return. The 16th Amendment to the Constitution is a fraud. And if you file, you waive your Fifth Amendment rights. I said, okay, that's another stuff she was saying. Now, this is a lot of reading. But I kept reading because I was very interested, being a CPA and into fraud and all that. I wanted to see what was going on. So here in the third column, it says no one has been able to collect the $50,000 reward offered by Bill Conklin to anyone that can identify the section of the Internal Revenue Code that makes a typical worker liable for the income tax. I'm serious about winning this $50,000. Okay, so it's at my desk. Basically, I just shoved everything off my desk and got the codes out, the regulations out, the tax guide. I got on the internet to look at the Cornell University site, all these different things, and I started researching. And 2 weeks later, I said to myself, oh my goodness, we have a problem here. It doesn't look like I'm going to win this money. And I was sitting there at my desk thinking, this thing is a fraud. 2 weeks it took me to sit there and realize that. I didn't just look at the positive, I looked at the negative, I looked at the IRS site. All these things are going on. This thing is a fraud.
So what she did was she got passed along a copy of a newspaper that had a big, huge editorial in it that said you don't have to pay taxes. And it had all the reasons. It was a full page. There's a $50,000 reward to anybody who could show them the line in the code that said the average American who just works a W-2 job, living in the several states, had to file a tax return. So she was an IRS criminal investigator that's now working in the private. She's like, I'm going to collect $50,000. I've put people in jail for not filing. So she went looking, couldn't find it. Could not find where it says that. But yet, she told you at the beginning, people never challenge the IRS. They just acquiesce. Hey, you earned extra income. Oh, I did? Let me sign there, right?
I'm a CPA and a former IRS agent. I sat there at the desk, I was by myself, and all these thoughts started going through my head. The first thought was, now I'll finally open up the codes and regulations. Because at the IRS, they trained us with these little guides. We didn't use the codes and regulations. We would get one of these, and you would have to read it, understand it, and pass this little test. And all these little guides that I got, I read them, and I made A's on all my tests. And I thought, and I guess the rest of the agents in training thought, that the information that was in here was the same that was in those stick codes and regulations. But it's not necessarily the same. The things that are in these training manuals are not necessarily the same things in codes and regulations. I learned that in my studying. And the time that I was doing the research, I also learned about the Pocket Commission. Now, I'm going to let this go around the room, but y'all got to get it back. This is the outside that I purchased of the Pocket Commission that I had. And before I left, I had the sense of mind to make a copy. This is the little badge I used to flip out at people and say, give me your books and records. Give me your bank statements. Give me all your credit cards.
One of the interesting things about this is the FBI also does not have a real authorization to commit law enforcement. In fact, if you watch videos on YouTube of quote-unquote FBI agents, they'll say sheriff's department or police department, and then they'll say, I'm working with the FBI. Those are FBI agents that do not have a law enforcement charter because they're under the DOJ. They've been denied a law enforcement charter every time they go to the Senate because they're corrupt. And so they work under the DOJ. So when they come into your local jurisdiction, they have to borrow an office and a laptop from the police department or the sheriff's department or the state troopers, and then they task force. And that's how you get FBI agents spread around. They actually, in and of themselves, do not have authority. They have to borrow someone else's authority. The IRS does the same thing with the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearm Agency. That's the only legitimate taxing that you can have, and so they borrow their authority.
And people, okay, here, even the counties, I go to the county, do it. I go just about anywhere and flip this little thing out and get whatever I want. There's a lot of power nuts out there doing that, guys. Y'all know it. Half of you already know about it. There's an enforcement pocket commission and there's a non-enforcement pocket commission. And I started looking back at this thing. It has SER, Southeast Region.
The enforcement pocket commission is the ATF one. The non-enforcement is the one that normal IRS agents get.
First of all, I'll read it. It has my picture up here, and it says, Sherry Jackson, whose signature and picture appear above, is duly commissioned as Internal Revenue Agent and has authority to perform all duties conferred upon such officers under all laws and regulations administered by the Internal Revenue Service, including the authority to investigate and require and receive information as to all matters relating to such laws and regulations. And it has SER and some other numbers and an A. And based on this Internal Revenue Manual, A means administrative. So I'm an administrative clerk out there on the front lines. And I'm an administrative clerk with a non-enforcement pocket commission. Okay, so I'm starting to get angry here. Starting to think about all that. I had to take bribes and get little tape recorders taped to my body and the little microphones on me and go in and take bribes from people. But, thinking about stuff like that, what they got me out here. I'm thinking I really have authority. And this is administrative, non-enforcement pocket commission. That was one of the other things I thought about. And then I thought about, and I found out this is another issue, a levy versus a notice of levy. This is something that I didn't deal with a lot because I was an agent and I just assessed the tax. I wasn't a tax collector. I just assessed it. So this is a notice of levy. And someone said, hey, this is a notice of levy. This is what the banks get, or your job or whatever. They said, look at the back of it. So I'm looking at the back of this notice of levy, and it says section 6331, levy and distraint. And then it says B and C. And I'm thinking, it starts off with B? What happened to A? So I looked up A. And here's A. And it says levy may be made upon the accrued salary or wages of any officer, employee, or elected official of the United States, the District of Columbia, or any agency or instrumentality of the United States or the District of Columbia by serving a notice of levy. I'm thinking, but that's not most people. That's not the person that works at AT&T or Bell South or Coca-Cola. That's not most people. Aren't people noticing that the A isn't on here? Aren't they curious about it? Why are they doing this? All this is going through my head during this period of time. Then I'm realizing that there's a rat in the camp. That's what I call it.
So it's interesting with the intent, the notice to lien and levy garnish wages. I've seen that notice many, many times, right? We've helped a lot of people that have it. And one of the things I learned years and years ago when I was flipping houses at the foreclosure auction, people sometimes forget I flipped over 250 houses that I bought at auction. So I'm pretty experienced there. And you get, you learn how to read title reports, and you know what position mortgages are in, because if you want to buy a first mortgage, if you buy a second mortgage, you have to pay off the first mortgage. And you always got to watch liens. Because if certain liens follow the property and certain liens don't follow the property. So you really do have to pay attention to what liens you have and when they were filed and stuff like that. And oftentimes what comes up on title reports is IRS liens. People are being foreclosed on. There's a good chance they're behind on taxes. I was telling my wife today, at least 50% of the houses that I bought for $1 over, including one deal that was the fastest home run deal I've ever seen. It was 30 days from purchase to close, from buying it at the auction to selling it, and the client made $99,000 in 30 days. And I can't remember how much he put down. Wasn't a lot down. It was a property that everybody thought was a second mortgage, and then we found out that it wasn't a second mortgage. The first mortgage had been paid off, and we had an inside track on that. We knew it had been reconveyed. But additionally, there was an IRS lien. So when everybody figured out the first mortgage was gone and we were bidding on a first mortgage, it used to be a second mortgage, smoking deal, the IRS lien came up and everybody bailed out. Everybody bailed out off this deal. And I'm like, no, let's buy it. This was like the 50th house I bought with an IRS lien. IRS liens do not stay with the house. They stay with the taxpayer. And so even though it shows it on the title report, if that person sells his house, then the title company will withhold it, or the IRS will see that he sold it and have a way to get the money. But if they didn't sell it, if it was taken, aka a foreclosure auction, the lien just disappears because it never was a lien. It was actually never recorded as a lien. It's just a letter that says notice of intent to lien, garnish, and levy. They don't actually have a lien, garnishment, or levy unless they get a court order or you sign for it. So you can just ignore it and it will just kind of hang out there. And we would take advantage of that all the time at the auction. And apparently other investors didn't know that. You just asked a question, what?
I was muted, sorry. What about for property taxes?
Property taxes you have to cure them when you buy them, unless you want the property to be foreclosed on by the county, then you
got to pay it off.
Cure the arrears. Yeah.
I'm a former county clerk, actually, so.
Yeah, you're not getting out of the county taxes. Those are stuck to the property. But IRS taxes follow the taxpayer.
Got it.
So let's go back to this.
But this is the straw that broke the camel's back. The Federal Reserve is not federal. How many of you did not know before today that the Federal Reserve isn't federal? If you didn't, don't be shy. If you didn't know before today that the Federal Reserve isn't federal, raise your hand. Most people don't know that. 9 out of 10 people that I ask off the street don't understand that the Federal Reserve is a non-auditable private banking cartel. They are collecting $36 million an hour in interest from the American people. $36 million an hour in interest from the American people. My children.
I imagine what that is now.
My 2 children were born $86,000 in debt based on the national debt.
Which, by the way, in one of our classes at 1776 Live this week, I think it was in the workshop, I mentioned the concept of original sin and how original sin creates a debt that you work your whole life to pay off through good deeds and service to the church, the kingdom of God, right? Which, when that concept was originated, was the government. the church and the government were the same thing. The Catholic Universal Church, right? Well, that idea of original sin has been reinstituted with original debt. You're born with debt, and you just acquiesce and accept it as if it's normal to be born with the sins, which is literally the Hebrew word for debt, the debts of your parents.
And why am I going to take away from those children to give to somebody that's going to be born in 2030? It's not going to happen. So that was my decision. It was very easy. You know, you think about stuff like fear. Oh, the IRS is going to get you. They're going to take your stuff. That's not important to me. Stuff's not important to me. My children are important to me. I'm one of those mothers that will roll up her sleeves with one leg and try to whoop you if you mess with my children. And I think that a lot of mothers are like that. So this is what my decision was. And I went on and started educating people. One of the things that people asked me once I made this decision and started talking about it, how are we going to run the country without the income tax? I don't know how much Dan got into it, but the Grace Commission report that Ronald Reagan put out in 84, says that none of the money collected in income tax goes towards running the country. But the bottom line is it's not going towards running the country. So you patriotic people out there, you've been fooled. Beardsley Rummel, he was Federal Reserve Chairman back in 1946, did a speech before the American Bar Association. The title of his speech was Taxes for Revenue Are Obsolete. Within the body of this report, he says that the taxes, the income taxes for redistribution of wealth. What is redistribution of wealth? What is that? That's taking from me that I've worked hard for and giving it from somebody else to somebody else. Shouldn't I have the right to redistribute my wealth if I want to? Another question that they ask me is, how come I haven't heard this on TV or on the radio or in the newspaper? Well, sweetie, the simple answer to that is the same people who own the television stations and the newspapers and the radio stations are the same people who are involved with the Federal Reserve. And here is a little statement that says that it only requires 5% ownership to significantly influence the media. Rockefeller is one of the original shareholders of the Federal Reserve. As early as 1963, the House Banking Subcommittee reported that Rockefeller, through Chase Manhattan Bank, controlled 5.9% of the stock in CBS and the bank and gained interlocking directorates with ABC.
What you have to realize is the Rockefeller family, along with the Rothschilds, who worked through the Rockefellers in the United States, they own everything from your medical to your secondary education, and then they were the original Department of Education, the Rockefeller School Foundation or Education Foundation. It was established in the 1800s. That group of people literally became the Department of Education. Okay, so the Rockefellers, as part of becoming founding members of the Federal Reserve, 1913, along with the sister organization, Federal Reserve sits outside of the government. It's quasi-government. It was sanctioned, not created, sanctioned by the government. They're not controlled by the government, other than that the president gets to appoint the board governors, but they don't have appropriations, so Congress can't control them with purse strings. There is no oversight over the Federal Reserve. It is not a part of the government. It's just simply the government's reserve bank. They hold the reserves. They replaced the Treasury, essentially. And then you have the sister, which is a government entity, the IRS, Internal Revenue Service. And what do? They pay interest to the Federal Reserve, not to operate the country. We always borrow more money from the Federal Reserve to operate the country. And so what she's saying there is, it's like, when you think about why do we pay taxes? If you look at Americans that paid taxes in the 1910s, 1913 to 1920 to 1920, it's hardly anybody. It's basically just public corporations. And then after the Great Depression, it skyrockets up. But think about it. The way the Rockefellers set it up was, if you wanted to go to college, you had to be a taxpayer. If you wanted to go to the hospital, you had to be a taxpayer. Now, they left loopholes, but they made it easier to get public services through their public stuff, schools, colleges, hospitals, right? If you were enumerated and enrolled in the Social Security and in the tax system. And so by the time the Great Depression came around, and there's so many Americans were out their hands out looking for benefits, jobs, right? All those job programs, you want to go work for the Hoover Dam. Well, now you're a government employee because you're literally working for the government. So now you have to pay taxes. Whereas if you work for a mom pop, corner grocery store, you didn't have to pay taxes, only if you were employed by the state. Well, all of a sudden, Great Depression, a third of the country is employed by the state, and that's where it gets into the zeitgeist. Everybody has to pay taxes. It was never the case. It was never the case.
I went all the way through high school, all the way through college, all the way through testing for the CPA, and all this Irish training, and didn't hear about any of this. You think they want this information out here for you guys to eat up and chew up and find out what's really going on? I don't think so. Now, another one. Why don't we just tell our elected officials about this? Okay. And to make a really long story short, the We the People Foundation, the same people that put out this ad, put together a hearing And these 40 researchers, we're going to ask the IRS and the DOJ these questions, and we're going to have this big meeting in Washington called the Truth and Taxation Hearings. Okay, so we got together with 537 questions. So we sent them the 537 questions so they could research and have the answers. And what did they do? They reneged on coming. They signed off on it, but they reneged on coming. So you all didn't get to hear the truth. We went on and had the hearings anyway, put it on CD, marched around Washington, giving it to all 535 congressmen and senators. Please look at this information. We got stupid responses back like, thank you for visiting our offices in Washington. The next time you come to Washington, please visit us again. They don't care. Your presidents don't care. Another one that they ask me, or they'll say something like, well, this just sounds like it's some kind of conspiracy theory. Y'all hear that a lot? Okay. Well, tell me this. What's the difference between a conspiracy and a strategy? Don't you understand that this is all by design? All this black, white stuff. You're white, I'm black. You're Democrat, I'm a Republican. Y'all heard of divide and conquer before, right? Why y'all letting them do it to us? While I'm sitting up here arguing with this man about what his great-great-great-granddaddy did to mine, there's this big old fence closing in around us. And while I'm sitting here wasting time and he's sitting here telling me why he doesn't know, we need to put our heads together and figure out how to get out of this fence that these people are building around us. Am I right? Yeah. That's what we got to be. Divide and conquer, we can't let that work anymore. It's been working all these years. Then we need to get together and understand. First of all, you need to understand what is going on with your money. You work hard. It's like we're a hamster on a wheel. This country started out with taxation without representation. Where are we now? Why did we get back to where we started? We got lazy and comfortable. Get out your comfort zone. I never tell people to file a tax return. I never tell them not to file. I never tell people to pay taxes, and I never tell them not to pay. What I tell people is to do your own research, do your due diligence, and decide whether or not you're going to be a slave or get off the plantation. That's your choice. So in essence, you're wasting time. As long as you continue to feed the monster's going to grow. They're going to laugh in your face. And any kind of cause that you have, anything that you're trying to do in your life concerning getting things back on track with our country, the way it's supposed to be, you're going to get laughed at because you continue to give them the money to do whatever it is they're doing to us. A lot of people don't care. A lot of people get the money taken out of their checks and they actually think they're getting, I get back $3,000 every year. They don't take anything from me. I say, sweetie, look at your W-2. They took $14,000. They gave you back $3,000 of your own money. Oh. But the point is, if each of us understands where we are, who we are, and tries to do something about it, then we're going to get somewhere. This is a great country, but it's off track. And who's going to get it back on track? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all.
I love these old videos like that because it's not like this new revelation we've had that the government's corrupt and that the tax system's messed up. It's not new. It's just more every day someone else enrolls in this idea, this concept that, hey, we're out of track. They're building a fence around us. I listened to a Joe Rogan podcast this week. I rarely listen to Joe Rogan podcasts anymore, but he had RFK on. It was stunning to listen to that podcast and some of the admissions that RFK made, talking about the control grid and how AI is going to do that while simultaneously talking about putting your medical records on your phone. And it's they're building a control grid and they're going to offer benefits to us to enroll in it. Right. Mm-hmm. And then, hey, for convenience at the hospital and for convenience at the airport, convenience here, and you can get these Trump accounts. So now your kids are locked into the market and they're locked into the corporation of the United States. You know what I mean? It creates this, they're pitching it. It's just a question of whether you want to go in it. What's amazing about the 1776 Live community, Lisa, is the number of people who have been on this journey for decades, some of them decades. It's amazing to me when I talk to someone that's got a job and they're like, well, I haven't filed a tax return in 15 years. It's like, how'd you get, well, they bugged me for 2 years and then they left me alone. Why? Because I didn't acquiesce and I wasn't worth it. When I was in prison and I met a bunch of people that were there on tax stuff, I'd always drill down, tell me exactly what happened. Always fraud. Always fraud. They earned more money. They filed a false tax return and then they argued with the government and tried to hide the money. Without exception, every person I saw that was in prison for the IRS, it was because they were putting money in Canada, in the Bahamas, somewhere else, and they were trying to hide. It was never big amounts, like hundreds of thousands of dollars, never millions, but $200,000 on a windfall profit. They put it in a Canadian bank and filed a return with the guy made like 300. He was a car finance guy, made like 300 grand. It was always fraud.
Just saying no is the way to go. Don't try to shuffle it around and try to be smart. Just say no.
The way we do it is acceptance. We don't argue the facts, law, jurisdiction, or venue. There's a whole bunch that goes into this, and it works with the IRS. There's no money. They can't make you pay anyways. They physically send you a payment check that you look at it and you think it's a bill because you don't know what the definition of payment is. If the IRS sends you something on their letterhead that's written like a check, that's made out to them, and it says payment on it, right? When you look up in the dictionary, it says in an exclusive legal sense, a payment is from the debtor to the creditor. So when the IRS says you owe all this money and then they send you a payment, what are they doing? They're paying you because you're the creditor. The people are the good faith and credit of the whole system. The citizen is the taxpayer of it. And USC 18 defines citizen as a vessel of the United States of which the United States has complete and total dominion. Well, that's the opposite of what we're taught in civics class, right? So they define citizen as taxpayer basically, or as vessel. We define citizen as American and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Sure, little c, capital C is theirs. And so what you do is you just accept it. You're a citizen. You have a social security number. You have a job. Don't file. If you don't file, then what they do is they'll file on your behalf. But you don't get the benefits, the deductions, the standard deduction. You don't get to write off your expenses. I don't care. Then they send you a payment. You accept it. They send it back and your ledger balances, your books balance. But you cannot argue with them, right? You just simply have to be like, I don't have to pay. I just have to accept. That's the way the law is written. So anyways, it's fascinating. It's funny to me when you go back through time, you see these people and it's the same thing. And you know what? They haven't updated the IRS code. It's had minor updates, right? And none of them have gone to the core of it on who has to pay. In fact, in 1776 Live, Anthony does a class where he goes through the code itself. It's like, unless you live in the District of Columbia, unless you live in Puerto Rico or one of the territories, or you work for the federal government itself, like they sign your paycheck, then under no circumstances are you required to file, and under no circumstances are you required to pay unless you volunteer. If you volunteer, the point of contact where you volunteer, and this is what everybody figures out, it's your W-4. You go get a job and they give you 3 forms. They give you an employment contract with the corporation you're going to work for. They give you an I-9, which is a Department of Homeland Security form to make sure that they can legally hire you. Why? Because they're bound to only hire legal citizens.
Yeah, and that really works out.
Doesn't really work out. Then the third thing is a W-4. You don't have to fill out a W-4. You could fill out you could fill out a W-8BEN. That is an IRS form. They're acting as agents of the IRS when they hand that to you. And they are not allowed to do that. They just do it because they think they are, because they hired a CPA who says, here, do this. They're passing their corporate burden onto you, their employees, by extension. They're hiring a vessel instead of hiring a living being. And if you just go,
so I'm on the other side of that, right? I've been in a situation where I have had to collect W-4s because I do payroll I've done payroll for 2 different governments where I've collected the W-4, and I just thought, I have to have this in order for you to get paid. And you can mark exempt and you can go that direction. And I'm not a tax attorney. So if you want to do that, that's fine. We've had employees that do that, but I didn't realize that you didn't have to file a W-4.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you, in your payroll software, you just go put exempt in the drop-down menu. It's that easy.
That's
right?
true.
And so
that's true.
Any form they give you, whether it's a W-4 or a W-7 or a W-8BE9, you just put exempt as the human resource person, the accountant, and you just don't withhold taxes. Is that it? They're still an employee for state purposes. They're not independent contractors, but they don't have to enroll in the IRS to work at your corporation. So they got payroll managers being agents of the IRS soliciting new taxpayers that they don't have to solicit. Nobody's ever explained to them the other options. A W-8B, like we talk about trust at 1776, a trust fund.
Funny.
If I have a trust and I go get a job, I can just tell my employer to pay the trust and let the trustee dribble it out to me over my life. And I pay taxes when I take distributions, not when I get paid. And it's like, why can't you do that? It's just a W-8BN. The employer just cuts the check to the trust. There's so many more things you can do. But again, who's going to teach you this stuff? The Rockefellers? They're not going to teach you that. Fox News? Of course not. You know what I mean? And one of the phrases we learn a lot is it's not about the money, it's about control. They can print all the money they want. The taxing creates control. Washington State, they're in the process of passing a state income tax, which our Constitution forbids, right? It's not supposed to have one. But they're passing one under the guise that it's a tax on the rich only. I've lived in Washington for 15 years. I've never filled out a state tax return, ever. When I talk to people in other states, where, Lisa, you and I, State Franchise Tax Board of California, a franchise tax board charging income tax. That's interesting. It's almost like they say it in the name. They view you as a franchise, not as a living being that they have de jure jurisdiction to tax, right? They act like the sheriff of Nottingham running around collecting taxes, but they have no authority. Anyways, I've never filed a state tax return. Well, now they're going to pass this bill, and what they're doing is they're saying, well, it's an income tax for everyone, but we're going to do $1 million exemption. So, like if feds, you got $19,000 standard deduction, you'll have $1 million standard exemption. So until you make over $1 million, you won't be taxed. Just a flat 9%, no big deal. Well, hold on a second, but now I have to file.
Or you pay and get it refunded, right?
No, well, I have to file, and then I have to apply the exemption, and I don't owe any taxes. But that's a burden on me, to take the time to file, to do a whole separate form, but also it tells the state how much revenue I'm making. The state of Washington has no idea how much revenue I make. They charge me $1,000 a month for property tax on my property. We pay a 9.7% sales tax. Everything, we have $5 a gallon gas still because they're charging like almost $2.50 a gallon or $2 or something a gallon in taxes. They raised it 80 cents since Trump was elected, right? It's like the gas price drops a few cents here and they just immediately go vote for new taxes on it to keep the gas prices high. But yet they're going to pass this income tax, and now they're going to start having people report. So I have to file a state. That's right. Like that's the problem. That's what happened in the 1930s. Most Americans never filed a tax return. They weren't required to. Only public corporations were required to. But by the 1930s, half the country, a third of the country is working for a federal entity, and it just gets into the bloodstream. Once you start working for the government, you go work on the Tennessee Valley River Act thing and, build a couple dams, and then go work for the Forest Service for 2 summers, building trails at, a new national park that they made during the Great Depression. And then you get off and you go start working at the Ford factory. Well, why did you continue your W-4 at the Ford factory? Why didn't you stop the withholdings? Why didn't you stop? You know what I mean? I don't know. I thought I was supposed to do that. Death and taxes, right? Anyways, fascinating stuff. I saw that video and I thought this would be a great place to watch that.
And people who have done a W-4 can go back and do the W-8. They can go back and do the W-8 BEN.
Yeah, well, anytime you submit a new tax document, it supersedes the old one. So, yeah. Anyways, I'm not a tax advisor. I'm not a CPA, and I don't advise anybody to do or not do anything with their taxes.
I'm becoming a CPA, so I'll learn all this stuff when I'm doing my regulation test in June.
I find it very visually stimulating. It's interesting.
What do you guys? I got to bounce out. Thanks for letting me jump on for a bit.
Nice to see you.
See ya.
Bye.
Carlitos, I sent him the link. Come in and talk to us.
Let's see. In Puerto Rico, they call taxes a contribution to the Commonwealth, not actual taxes. IRS office is in Puerto Rico. No, I don't know the answer to that. They've got offices everywhere. I don't know where their official office is. It wouldn't surprise me. I've heard that before. Carlitos, I think so. The main Fed bank for the U.S. corporation is in San Juan. Yeah, that's interesting. It's funny when you go back and you look at how the District of Columbia was created, and you read when they designate the 10 square miles and they create the District of Columbia, it says in there it's a corporation for the purpose of making contracts. And it differentiates it from the states on how it has, what immunities it has and stuff. It's pretty interesting. What do you think about Iran?
Well, I have to curb what I said to you earlier about it. I'd love to see what everybody thinks. I'm sorry that we've had some casualties. I personally feel like we got to get to the other side of this. And I believe that you've got Russia, you've got China, that are proxies with Iran. And, you talk about whether or not they could reach, our mainland, homeland, whatever. I think it's a dangerous world. I think we're dealing with terrorism in the homeland now. I believe a lot of, how many did you say? 800? Who said there was a number? Oh, I was listening to Mel K. She was talking about like 800,000 terrorists that are probably on our soil.
I heard 100, and then I heard 1,000. 100 of like terror watch list people, and then 1,000 that we believe are terrorists that cross the border.
Okay, I'm playing Monopoly numbers here, but I feel I get what the left's going to say about this, and Trump campaigned on no new wars, but this is nothing like going to Iraq. I don't see Trump wanting to, sure, he killed a lot of the people. I get that, and they were responsible for a lot of damage around the world. But I don't think he's going to go in and do what was done in Iraq when they fired everybody.
You know what I kind of look at it? It's like he's finding out who wants to fight, right? So Cambodia and Thailand, did they really want to fight? No, they didn't really want to fight. Pakistan and India, did they really want to fight? No, they didn't really want to fight. What was the Azerbaijan? Was it Kosovo and wherever it was, that other, I can't remember, but did they really want to fight? No, they didn't really want to fight. They wanted better business opportunities. They wanted, to be more included in the world market. And he was able to make that happen. You know what I mean? But when it came down to Venezuela, clearly they wanted to fight. When it comes to Cuba, clearly they want to fight. If it came down to economics, they would have changed tune 15 years ago when Chavez realized that social services were getting worse and he couldn't pick up the trash anymore. They would have changed course then, right? But it wasn't for them. It wasn't about collectivism and everybody doing better. It was about power. Cuba, same thing. I see that with Iran. It was like, let's make a deal, let's make a deal, let's make a deal, and they just kept doing what they do, and you just can't have it anymore. So I look at it, and then the other big thing is it's all a march to China. Iran supplied China with 15 to 20% of their oil at discount. Venezuela was providing like 5%. So between the two of them, you've just knocked off 30% of their petrochemical energy supply, which makes sense why they're building solar farms as fast as they can, because they have no domestic energy production to speak of, right? So it's really interesting. It feels like, those countries were very propped up by China. And what's the common thread? Communism. And, even Iran, they were, they're fascist, but they're that same dictatorial communist.
Do you ever listen to Promethean in Action, that group? Did you hear what she said about it?
Yeah.
That it's all about the banking. It's all the Rothschild, destroying that whole British, like it's really not about the taking over of the government. It's not about that. I have it pulled up if you want me to play it.
No, I know they've played two sides. Like Iran has been the Rothschild's balance sheet for 70 years, and it's off books because Iran is off books.
Right.
So on one hand, the Rothschilds have propped them up. They've laundered money through Iran, and then later through Venezuela, through Cuba, and
probably what's the other one that's going on? Russia and Ukraine.
Probably not there. No,
really.
The Russians and the Rothschilds do not get along going for 100 plus 150 years.
No, I mean Iran getting things over in Ukraine.
Well, what I'm saying is the Rothschilds have used those nation states as a balance sheet. That's how they could launder money for drugs, guns, and other stuff. But those countries are opposed to the nations where that banking cabal play nice. Like in America, if you commit fraud, you go to prison. In England, if you commit fraud, you go to prison. So on one hand, you have politicians and do-gooders who can easily point to the problem, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, and Libya, any number of these other countries. And simultaneously, they'll never do anything about it. Why? Because the bankers are using them as their off-books balance sheet. And so Trump taking them out eliminates the off books balance sheet. This is the whole Catherine Austin Fitts thing. Where's the 21 trillion missing dollars? A lot of it's in Iran. A lot of it's in Venezuela. A lot of it's in these off book balance countries that have had semi access to the world's financial system, but are not auditable and they're sovereign. So it's pretty interesting. They can't even get away with that stuff in Switzerland because Switzerland monitors it, even though they're a haven, right? They'll do asset protection and privacy, but they don't like to see banking fraud.
But they have all the knowledge, right? They just aren't going to give it to the other countries.
Yeah. So it's pretty interesting. It'll be really interesting because he's, on one hand, you can also say that those countries have kept the central bank, the fence that lady was talking about. They've kept the fence open because you've got 90 million people in Iran that can all, you can do transactions with them and get paid outside the system, and on it goes. But without that, there's no back door for billions of dollars to slip away.
Well, and I don't think it's a coincidence that what is it, the Riyadh?
The Riyadh.
That it was practically collapsed before this happened. The only thing that I'm supremely concerned about is how it's going to affect the midterms, and that the MAGA people are up in arms. Like, they're like, what are you doing putting attention over there when we wanted you to, prosecute here?
It's all in its time, though. They get exposed. Like Thomas Massey accepted that Quincy Institute Award, which is funded by Iran. So they'll all be exposed. And of course, nobody wants boots on the ground. Nobody wants foreign war, of course. But it was all up in arms a month ago over Venezuela. And now it's like, so.
Well, but we've never seen anything like this, where the commander in chief, the gentleman who made this decision, is saying, the ball's in your court now, Iranian people. You wanted this, you got this. Now you're going to have to stand up. So who's going to be the interim government? How is that going to happen? And will the interim government now hold to the ideologies, or will it listen to the people?
They actually have a constitution.
That's what I mean. When the Shah came in and did the whole thing that the whole thing, it's been totally, they lied. When he came in, he lied and said it was going to be one way, which it blows my mind that everybody listens to what the commie socialist people in America are saying. It's a lie.
It's never what they say it's going to be.
Never what you say it's going to be. That side for sure. So it's going to be really fascinating. And I mean, when we went into Iraq, we fired everybody, and we went under false pretenses, and it was terrible, terrible situation, the losses that we took. And this is just such a vulnerable time before the midterms. I shared with you, I said you watched it, the Bannon.
So let's break that down, though, before we get too far in that. This is where we had to stop talking before we went live.
Yeah.
So this is where I don't agree with you.
Yeah.
So obviously the election stuff has been near and dear to me.
Yeah.
And Venezuela, elections. Cuba, elections. Iran, elections. So we're coming up onto the and by the way, Act Blue is now like full bore under investigation by the DOJ, and Texas has them dead to rights. So Act Blue, and then if you look at the fundraising for the Democrats, here, let's see if I can find it here.
So you're saying you're worried about the midterms, or you're not worried about the midterms?
I think I'm worried about it like any election, but I'm definitely not worried about it for real. Like I mean, Donald Trump has said we're going to do some executive order to limit, to stop mail-in ballots, and he included the machines in there.
Yeah, I mean, then I'm fine. And now they're talking. Well, remember I sent you that message. They're going to nationalize the elections. If they're going to take control and they're going to be totally transparent, I'm not worried at all. I'm just worried about what happened in 2018. Like, we're right up on what was happening after he lost the midterms his first go around.
Yeah, I think that this is one of those scenarios where you need to get out and vote. You must get out and vote. Everybody's got to go vote just like normal. But I think we're going to find out in this midterm, because I do think they're going to do something, either criminal charges. The people that are around Trump's orbit are saying he's going to lay it out to the senators and he's going to put it in a spot where they can't deny it. Like if you look at that video of Matt DiPrino doing the Dominion machines and he runs 10 votes through it, and then he does the poll tabs and he's like, look, I just passed the audit. This many envelopes, this many signatures, this many counts. But he's like, the problem is you can't audit the ballots. You can't count the votes. You can only count the number of ballots. One political party wants voters. The other political party needs ballots.
Right.
And when you have these machines in the middle, you can get any result you want. Look at Georgia. Same exact margins for Biden as for Ossoff and Warnock. Exact same. My county, 40,000 extra voters than there are registered voters. 40,000 more people voted.
And it goes back to the voter rolls. They start inserting them before the election.
They didn't even go to the effort of putting them on the voter rolls in my county. They just sent ballots in. 40,000 extra ballots more than we had. We had 140% turnout in 2020. And these are the kind of things. Well, but it passed the audit. It didn't pass any audit. It didn't pass a third grade audit. You got more people that voted than you have registered. How'd they get a ballot? Right. And then you go through like
they found all these like hundreds of thousands of printed ballots that came in on trucks and boats. And
that's why my one saving grace is that they know this and Trump's in power and they can fix it. Right. And they can come down on it hard. And I think it will be dramatic. I think there will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Right. But I think he's going to try to get that Save America Act passed. And then because that Save America Act doesn't do anything with the machines. I think then they're going to pull the rug on the machines. And the reality is the machines are owned by one of Ed Martin's friends. Liberty Vote bought the Dominion name or whatever.
Yep.
Dominion and Smartmatic, they're the same machine.
Yep.
Right. They're both in serious lawsuits. So I think Liberty won't respond to emails. They won't answer anybody's questions. They won't provide customer support to the counties right now. And so I think they're just sitting back there with the corporation and they're ready to like send out an email to everybody saying, we can't get certified, or, can't use our machines. They don't work. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think they're just going to like right at the last second, just be like, oh yeah, we lost our certification. Turns out we have Chinese parts. Sorry guys. Good luck. Elections in 3 weeks. You know what I mean? Like,
gosh, I'm going to be sweating that. But that organization, that Steve, the shirt guy, I have the date and time for the next meeting. I think it's March 19th. I'm going to share it with everybody, and on Rumble, you can go and they'll tell you how to get involved locally.
And talking about the precinct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they are fantastic. Like the guy who's taking care, there are 2 people in California. He's been texting me, emailing me, calling me back, and they're just lovely people. And they're just trying to get the word out, and they're not freaks. They're just, and whether or not we want to, how involved you want to get, right? Do you want to knock doors? Do you want to make phone calls? Do you want to help people get registered? What do you want to do? And like you said, Taylor, it doesn't matter if it's Republican or Democrat. You just got to vote.
You got to go get involved.
You got to get involved.
I'm a big advocate of just go. Just show up at the meeting and dedicate a year to go every month. Just go. Be a body in the chairs and figure it out. You know what I mean? Go in and figure it out.
And it's not to go to your city council meetings. We talked about that on another Liberty Lounge. It really is about the people who are before that point, right?
There's 2 tracks, right? There's the fire department, and then there's the fire department, and then there's like, I don't know the analogy, but the fire department is going to the city council meeting or going to a committee meeting in the legislature when they're about to vote on something. That's fire department stuff. You're trying to put out a fire. That thing has been smoldering. They've done drafts. There's lobbyists involved. There's stakeholders involved. They're going to pass that bill or do something. They're just, tweaking the margins and the language and trying to, you know what I mean? Trying to make sure everybody's happy. That's fireman work right there. You're trying to put out a fire and limit the damage. So going to your council meeting live like that, it's important. It absolutely has its place, and you must do it, right? But at the same time, if you want to prevent those dumpster fires from getting to your council members' vote, then that's what you do at the political side. You go to the parties. The parties are the ones that come up with those ideas. They're the ones that have steering committees. They select who is going to be elected, right, by deciding who they're going to endorse on the ballot and whatnot. And so when you're involved at that level, you can influence it before it ever gets up to a vote, before it ever gets to mock draft legislation or anything like that. You can be a part of the opening conversations. It's amazing to me when I sit down with some of the people in my county and we talk about things that we want to accomplish. And it's like big dreams. What do we have to do? Well, we've got to win this election. We got to win this election. We got to win this election. And then we got to get a committee together for this. So the committee's probably not going to show up for 3 years, right? But we've got 3 elections that we have to win if we want to change the zoning. You know what I mean? Because those are the 3 people that stand in our way. So we've got to get 1, 2, 3. So now we're organizing around those campaigns and those positions in order to affect a policy change that we want to see done down the road. We're tired of going to the zoning meeting, fighting with them to change the zoning when they never will. But if you can change the people, which you do on the political side, then we can have a conversation about the zoning, because we can put people in there that share our thoughts and ideology.
I think it's brilliant. I'm so grateful you brought that to my attention. And in the chat, I shared the Rumble channel, it's Steve Stern. It's called Stern America. The meeting is March 19th, 11 to 1 on Rumble. And I'll get the website next. And like I said, they're funded right now. They're getting the message out. They're good people. Get involved.
That's
Call
awesome.
to action. And then the other thing is come to 1776 Live and have a community of like-minded people trying to figure out other things we can do.
Absolutely. The big thing is we vote with our eyes, our dollars, and our clicks. So we have to control our choices. And that's what 1776 Live is all about. And that's what the peasants are all about. We have to live here. We're in charge of our lives. If the government goes away, fails, whatever, decides to, one of the amazing things to me is right now, so many people that are on different welfare benefits, SNAP, EBT cards, Section 8, all those systems, people have been on Section 8 for 5, 10, 15 years. All of a sudden they're like, oh, you got to get a job or you're out in 6 months.
How about, did you hear they said if they get rid of all the fraud, they'll be able to balance the budget?
Oh, I believe it.
And that's going to kick a lot of people off of a lot of roles right there.
But that's the thing. You can't depend on the government, even if you are a welfare recipient. That stuff's going to dry up because you're asking me to pay. And eventually I'm going to be tired of paying. And I might just withhold my payment in general and suffer the consequences. And so that's where it's like, you've got to be self-reliant. You've got to figure out what to do, and in your personal life, financially, everything. You just don't want to be dependent on other people. And it's totally possible to be independent. You know what I mean? It's totally possible to create enough value for other people to be compensated and get by. I don't believe we live in a scarce universe where there's haves and have nots. Everybody has enough.
The only thing that's scarce is the wisdom, the knowledge, and the friendship community to actually take the action to do these things and not be paranoid. And Carlitos, thank you so much. What's being taught and practiced at 1776 Live is life-changing. Come check it out. We would love to have you. We have a fantastic meeting on Thursday nights where you can get a real deep dive into the different programs, equity, debt discharge. What else do we have? Real estate. We just launched a private trust that is in the process of looking at property and doing a flip, utilizing a lot of Taylor's expertise, and you can get involved in that. And then we also have a program for trusts. Lots of referrals for banking, ghost phones and computers. We walk the walk. We don't just talk the talk.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Lisa, we've hit our hour.
Yay! Thank you so much.
But Thursday Ignite, everybody, you got to go to 1776live.us and you can register for the Thursday Ignite presentation. And I'll probably be doing it again this week. And it's an excellent presentation. It introduces the 1776 Live community. So all of you peasants that are going to listen to this on replay, please take the time to come on Thursday night. That's our real pride and joy, what we're doing over there.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Taylor.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.